For years, Priscilla Herbil suffered painful cramps, and yet no one took her seriously, not her doctors or the people around her. She doesn't want others to have to go through what she did.
For 20 years, I suffered unbearable pain. My period always meant painkillers.
The accusation of a hysterical woman, patronizing, infuriating.
Of course, it's unacceptable that up to a few years ago, most people didn't even know what endometriosis is.
They're fighting for recognition and a life that's about more than chronic pain. For 20 years, Priscilla Herbil could not figure out what was wrong, why she was in such pain, even though people around her couldn't tell. Somehow she kept functioning as a nurse, as a partner, a mother, and as a friend who enjoyed going out. For the longest time, she thought it was her sciatic nerve. The stomach pains she chalked up to stress.
When you grow up as a woman, it's normal to have period cramps. And since most doctors are men, they don't have a lot of empathy for that. They just say, "You're a woman. That's just the way it is, the way it's always been." When I started getting to the bottom of my pain, I asked the people around me and realized it wasn't normal to have such terrible pain during my period. I started asking questions and learning more about what I could do to make my day-to-day more bearable.
At 36, she learned that the pain she had endured for years had an entirely different cause than she'd thought. It was endometriosis, a chronic inflammatory disease. She'd been getting through it with painkillers.
As time went on, I kept taking stronger painkillers. At one point, that simply wasn't enough anymore. Now that I've been diagnosed with endometriosis, I am slowly understanding why I feel so bad, and I'm learning how to deal with symptoms.
Severe period pain is one telltale symptom of the systemic disease. Others include heavy period bleeding, bloating, constipation, and other gut problems, as well as fertility issues. It's estimated that 10% of women in Europe are living with the disease. On average, it takes about 7 years to be correctly diagnosed. Theresia Crone grew up in the city of Schwerin in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Now the student is home visiting her parents. At 14, Theresia began to suspect that something wasn't right. Besides the severe pain, there was dizziness and fainting.
Ich war das erste Mal im Krankenhaus wegen so starker Unterleibsschmerzen, da war ich 14.
The first time I went to the hospital for severe abdominal pain, I was 14. But even though they found cysts, which are typical for endometriosis, no doctor even mentioned the word to me, let alone suggested I should have it checked out. Instead, the doctor performing the ultrasound, the one who discovered the cysts, just blurted out, "Well, I guess having kids will be difficult." I mean, who says that to a 14-year-old kid? The gynecologist I went to afterwards kept telling me for 3 years that it was normal for me to be in such pain. Like she was saying to quit making a big deal out of it. And at one point, it got so bad. It was during my finals in school, and of course I was under a lot of pressure. I had to start taking opiates because I was unable to sleep otherwise. And that was when I went back to the gynecologist and said, "I'm not leaving until I have answers."
The diagnosis came just as the first COVID-19 lockdowns went into effect, just before her high school finals.
That was German. That was math. And I think there I had... Right, that was biology. I still remember that math test was the worst experience. I had such bad stomach pains. I kind of stumbled through it, but I was only able to take the test because I had taken really strong pain medication, and I had such a hard time concentrating.
She tried reducing her medication, worried about the risk of addiction. But there are days when she can't even ride her bike. Theresia's pain can come at any time, not just during her period.
In my case, it really depends on my stress levels. If I'm stressed or when I'm not getting enough sleep, then I'm pretty much always in pain. It's just one of those things you can't generalize and say everyone has the same experience. That's why endometriosis is called the chameleon of gynecology. It's so difficult to diagnose. Everyone experiences it differently.
To learn more about how people with endometriosis can find relief sooner, she went to a specialized clinic in Rostock.
I was asking myself, how could it possibly be that I had to go from one doctor to the next for 3 or 4 years without ever being diagnosed correctly or even feeling like I was being taken seriously? And then I realized that many others had gone through similar things. So I'm curious to know what you think, what do we need, and what have you observed?
Generally, I must say endometriosis is a disease that is highly variable in the way it presents. And because it is so variable, we have to take our time and thoroughly examine our patients, really get behind what's causing their complaints and what might be affected.
A trained eye might recognize cysts during an ultrasound. When someone has endometriosis, cells similar to the lining of the uterus can start growing outside of the uterus, on the ovaries, intestines, or other organs in the pelvic region. The cysts are sensitive to hormones and can cause inflammation and considerable pain. At the end of her consultation, Theresia presents her initiative.
It's End Endo Silence. We're working on providing information as well as we can, considering we're not experts, but we would like to offer some basic facts.
She started End Endo Silence to change the politics around the disease. The initiative launched a petition which reached its target in just a few weeks, calling upon Germany's government to take more action to address endometriosis.
Before we started our campaign, there was not a single state parliament in all of Germany that had dealt with the topic of endometriosis. If you consider the fact that endometriosis affects about the same amount of people as, say, type 2 diabetes, then it's just mind-blowing to think that it hasn't even been brought up in politics yet.
A different approach in France. In 2022, Emmanuel Macron launched a national strategy to combat endometriosis.
I thought that was so powerful, seeing him give a speech on Instagram where he says endometriosis is a societal problem and we're going to tackle it. And I thought to myself, how amazing would that be if someone like Chancellor Scholz sat down in front of a camera and said, look, this disease that mostly affects women, it's a societal problem.
Specifically, Theresia's initiative is calling for more research investment. It's still unclear what causes the disease.
So little has been researched in the field of endometriosis because historically there's always been less money available for gynecology. So it's understandable that we'd need to invest more money here than we would in other topics that have seen intense research for years.
In 2023, a small success. The Bundestag decided to invest €5 million each year into endometriosis research. Today, Theresia's meeting Philip de Cunha, a member of her state parliament.
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you in Schwerin. How are you?
I'm glad this worked out. I'm good, thanks.
Shall we walk?
Sure.
Access to endometriosis treatment is particularly poor in this state. Certified treatment centers are few, and there are hardly any centers with sufficient expertise.
Aside from that, I also think it would be very, very important to introduce the topic to the public, to educate and sensitize administrators to the issue. So if someone requests recognition for disability, for example, that's not turned down immediately, because officials are sensitized to the ways it limits people in their daily lives. I've put together a document summarizing the key points, both in terms of the care situation now, as well as what a plan of action might look like.
I'll take that with me. Thank you very much. I hadn't realized there was such disparity in our society and that research was so far behind.
Germany's government and federal agencies have yet to recognize endometriosis as a chronic disease. France is a forerunner in Europe. Macron's administration has set aside 6 times the amount that Germany has for endometriosis research. The strategy also aims to make it possible to receive a fast diagnosis anywhere in the country, and it wants to provide more education, including in schools. Priscilla Herbil had to spend a long time searching before she found a place that could finally help her, a gynecological practice specialized in endometriosis. Neuromuscular electrical stimulation to reduce inflammation in her abdomen.
This treatment is meant to improve circulation. This will help supply more nutrients to the surrounding tissue.
Priscilla notices a difference in her everyday life.
This summer, I even took my son climbing. I couldn't have done that otherwise. I would have felt too much pain in my legs and my back. But there I was, climbing around with my son. It was incredible. And he was so happy. Wow, Mum, you can do that. There are no limits anymore. Not in my head and not in my body. I feel like I can do anything.
You'll keep improving. It'll get better and better. You can finally get your body back. From one appointment to the next, you'll be able to do more and more. And one day, your body will realize, I can do this after all.
Priscilla is tackling one symptom at a time. The next step is to adjust her diet. Many people with endometriosis struggle with indigestion, diarrhea, and bloating, known as endobelly.
I'm trying to eat more foods that won't strain my digestive system. Things that are anti-inflammatory. That's not too easy for someone with a sweet tooth like me. The hardest for me to avoid are pastries and alcohol. I just love an aperitif. And I still sometimes eat fried food. I know it's not good for my body, but I just can't help eating a few fries. I know I'll get a bit of a stomachache afterwards, but that won't stop me from living my life.
Yeah, we do the French press. I mean, we're 2 people. You stole the French press. As always. Basically, I buy the coffee and he makes it. That's it.
Theresia's next semester has begun. She studies German and French law. The first half of her classes were in Cologne, now in Paris.
And right in my second lecture, I got such bad stomach pains, in part because the room was so stuffy and that just wasn't helping. So I just walked out of the lecture because I knew that was it for me for the day. I knew the only thing I could do for myself was to go home, lie down, take a painkiller, and wait to feel better.
Theresia relies on the help of others to take notes for her, but compulsory attendance is a problem for her. If she misses more than 3 classes, she fails the course.
So I have to be very careful about how I use my energy. Will I use it to force myself to go to class and hear a lecture? Or will I use my energy to wash my clothes and make something to eat?
Endometriosis is always present in her day-to-day.
Voila.
I have friends and acquaintances whose disease progressed so far that some of their organs were affected. For example, they fused. And if you reach that point, you're no longer able to work. I'm definitely scared of that because I'm such an active person that the sheer thought of not being able to volunteer as much as I currently do is debilitating. I don't know how I could even be myself that way.
Priscilla has an appointment with her gynecologist to discuss an operation to remove some endometriosis cysts. She used to be afraid of these appointments, but here she finally feels safe. The long wait for a diagnosis is a structural problem. Studies show that most medical health professionals take women, especially black women, less seriously when they say they're in pain.
Madame Herbil, allez lever.
I spoke with a colleague about your physical therapy. Have you been making the progress you'd been hoping for?
Yes, I'm still doing my exercises.
Are they working?
I don't take any medication anymore, other than for contraception.
Okay, then all that's left is hormone therapy.
Right now, I'm tolerating the pill quite well. I don't know if that's somehow linked to the fact that I'm not taking any painkillers anymore and have lost a little weight. I'm not spotting anymore. I don't know if that's related.
I don't think so. That's more because the body needs time to adjust to hormone treatment. So if you're responding well, I wouldn't change things. The question is more, what will we do if this doesn't work? If everything is working, that's great. What about an operation? Today, we'd say no, but that's not the final answer. My goal is to avoid needing surgery in the future.
Abdominal surgery becomes necessary when the disease begins to damage the organs.
By now, laparoscopic surgery is the second or third choice for treating endometriosis. In certain cases, it is inevitable because organs have been affected by the progressing endometriosis. This is especially the case for the urinary tract. Then there's no other choice, and surgery becomes a necessary treatment to prevent worse damage. I'm not the one who determines the severity of the disease. That becomes evident from my patients' daily lives. Some lead totally normal lives, even though ultrasound or MRI scans show they have a severe case of endometriosis. And on the other hand, patients with just a few lesions can face considerable limitations and not be able to leave the house for 3 days a month, for example. Then the disease is severe.
The link between endometriosis and infertility is especially painful. Many are diagnosed when they are trying to conceive. Theresia's hoping to network in France. She's heading to an after-work event organised by Endo France, an organisation that promotes awareness of the disease, much like Theresia's own initiative.
Oui, c'est ça. Oui, c'est ça. Enchantée, moi je suis Marion. Ah, d'accord. Voilà. Prends place, alors, soit au centre, soit à côté de moi. Je vais vous parler simplement de choses.
Today, I'm going to tell you a bit about endometriosis. You might already know a thing or two, but maybe you'll learn something new. We all learn from each other. As you can imagine, everyone here has been diagnosed with endometriosis. Is there anyone here who has known for less than a year? Okay, so the diagnosis is still fresh. We all know female anatomy. We call it endometriosis because the fine membrane that lines the uterus is called the endometrium. These uterine-like cells are responsible for the disease.
On evenings like these, Marion Coquet also explains the different theories about how endometriosis develops. There's still so much unknown.
But don't despair. Keep your chin up. There's a lot that can help. You just have to get started.
For Marion, meditation helps.
I hope you now have a better understanding of what's happening in your bodies.
Equally as important as her talks are the chances to share stories.
I told my doctors that I was in pain and that I didn't feel well, but they just said that was normal. Women just got their periods, and menstrual pain was always bad.
I kept dealing with doctors who said this wasn't their field. So they sent me to a specialist who said they couldn't help me and sent me to a general practitioner. I felt like a ping pong ball. Talking to others helps me feel like I'm not alone.
Theresia is already planning her next steps.
There's still a possibility of taking this to the European Parliament with a European Citizens Initiative.
Priscilla's journey to better managing her chronic disease now includes routine massages.
It's like a cleansing, like a rendezvous with myself.
Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on the tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, and a new life for me.
Quand je rentre chez moi, je me sens
I feel so relaxed and peaceful. When I come here, I feel like I'm myself. Then I'm not just my disease, not just the pain in my sciatic nerve or in my abdomen. Here I am me. Everything begins here.
Priscilla and Theresia learned about each other while this film was being made. Priscilla proposed they meet in her favorite cafe.
Hi.
Ravie de te rencontrer.
I love this cafe.
You know it?
This was the first cafe I visited when I came to Paris to study.
And for me, it was the first cafe I visited after moving to Paris.
Moi, je vais prendre un citron chaud avec du miel sucre.
Ok. Moi aussi. D'accord. C'est tout?
Une carotte d'eau.
D'accord.
Merci. Et comment ça s'est passé pour toi en participant à ce reportage?
Now that I could take a step back, I've realized that in the past 20 years, which were very chaotic, I lost a lot of time. All that time, I thought it was all in my head. Now it's important to me that people affected know, yes, it is painful. Yes, you do have stomach pains. You can't really even get out of bed, and the only thing you can do is bring your kid to school. And that feels like the end of the world. But you're not alone. And it is possible to lead a normal life with endometriosis.
My greatest wish is that I might find a better way to deal with my disease. Because right now, I think I'm kind of sticking a Band-Aid over anything that starts bleeding. But I haven't really found a long-term strategy for managing this illness. On a societal level, I hope that this stops being a taboo topic, that schools start teaching children about endometriosis, that it's taught in lecture halls, that it's debated in talk shows, and that Germany's Bundestag finally passes a decision on the matter.
To anyone who is affected, and anyone who has just recently been diagnosed, don't give up hope. There are plenty of solutions, and we believe you.
On vous croit.